Welcome back, class, from the totally planned Easter holidays. My name is Mr. Holly, and today we're going to have a recap on the past 5 lessons. Now, when you start your drawing, do you remember how you start it? With guidelines, that's right. Here, for example, is the action line. The line goes down the spine, remember? Yeah? Top circle is the head, and the rest of the circles show how tall the character is. This character is 7 heads tall, therefore, by rule of thumb at least, they're about 7 feet tall. The hips come at about halfway up the body. But this is a more cartoony style I'm using here, so I'm a bit more free to do what I want with it, basically. Now, the next guidelines you can use skeletal guidelines to make it look like the rib cage and the pelvis and whatnot, or you can use basic shapes. Here, I kind of use a combination of the two. I start off with the rib cage and a line for the pelvis, then I add basic shapes on top of that, so I got a more half cartoony, half real-ish style, I guess. Then I add circles where the joints would be, so I know where their joints are and how big their joints are, like the size of the knees, the hips, the shoulders, etc. Remember, the knees and elbows come about halfway down their respective limbs. Now you start adding in more specific details like facial features, the hair, in this case the bunny ears. Then once you know how the character's body looks, you add their clothes over the top. Remember, these are guidelines, so as long as you're drawing in fairly lightly so you can rub them out again later, you can go back and change things that you don't think quite work as well as you think they can or think they should. So you might draw the clothes and then decide that their body doesn't fit it properly, so you change their body shape slightly. However, you have to be sure that you like the guidelines you've put down when you start inking, because you can't change after that unless you have one of those inks that you can rub out again. But apart from in that case, or if you happen to have Tipex, you can draw. But apart from in those two cases, or if you're drawing on like Photoshop or something, so you can rub it up, you know what I mean. Make sure that you like your guidelines before you start inking. It'll save you a lot of time. Now, inking is pretty simple. You just gotta draw over the lines you've already drawn. I mean, it may be a bit tricky if you have too many guidelines. Some artists like to rub out some of their guidelines that they don't need anymore. Really, the most important thing when you're inking is to have a steady hand, and also an ink pen. Speaking of ink pens, remember you can use different sizes of ink pen for different effects. Usually you use thicker ink pens for outlines, thinner ones for more specific tiny little details, like lines under eyes, for example. But it's a good idea to start with your sort of middling size ink pen so you can get most of the details down. Now, once you've finished inking and rubbed out your guidelines, you can start colouring. Remember, it's good to stick to a simple colour scheme, so don't go for every single colour that exists. Try to stick to generally 3 main colours. Obviously, you can throw a couple more in, because you're probably going to need them. Unless you're going for an extremely messy style, it's generally a good idea to stay inside the outlines. Which, if you get super expensive pens like I do, it helps because they do that, because they're magic. Now, I haven't used shading on this particular drawing, but if you want to, there are various different styles. You can go for soft shading, which is when you make it fade and make it look more realistic-ish. And then there's like hard shading, which you generally see in cartoons, where it's just this bit is light, this bit is dark. There's no blending between them. Sometimes there's a mix of these two styles. Sometimes they're completely new, random, wacky styles of shading. The important thing is to experiment to see what you think works for you. Or, in this case, doesn't work because I didn't use shading. There we have it, folks, the finished product. Minty the Bunny Rabbit. Now, as always, if anyone wants to share the drawings that they've drawn because of this series, then my art blog is down in the doobly-doo. And since technically this is a recap and I haven't actually taught you anything, then there's no real homework I have for you, so I guess that's everything. So, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, and see you next week.